Welcome back to Reynolds Runabouts, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Reynolds, and today we are going to paint the bottom of this boat, Milestone Day. I have prepped the surface with 3 coats of primer and 3 applications of fairing compound to get all the divots and imperfections that I wanted to address. And then I finished off the last coat of primer and then waited 24 hours and then sanded it with 220. So now it's ready for what I'm going to use. I used this on my last restoration on a WageMaker. It's Pettit's brand Vivid Anti-Fouling Paint. It's an anti-fouling paint, but it's also hard. So it sands well, will stand up to trailer and water use, and it'll look really good. So, and this paint matches the paint that I had found on this boat when I stripped it a couple years ago. So this is a single part of Vivid. And I'm going to go ahead and just put it on my brush. I'm cleaning the surface with, I'm using the Echo Solvent by Total Boat. It's a kind of a paint thinner. So I'm going to do the whole boat surface to make sure that it's dust-free and ready to accept paint. And then I'm going to let it dry completely. And I use a mask because even though it's called Echo Solvent, I find it to be a little hard to breathe. So I use that as much as I would use with acetone. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will do probably 3 coats, depending on how it looks. It's minimum 2, probably do 3, maybe 4. I'll see, and then I'll move on to the final priming of the hull sides, which is again it's in the same shape. It needs 1 more coat of primer for the sides before I put the black on, and I've got some fairing I want to do by the rub rail, so. I'm going to get the white done, and then I'm going to move on to the black. So I've sanded the first coat of white bottom paint, and I'm going to now put on the second coat. And in preparation, I took the Pettit's 120 thinner to do my dust collection with my blue towel. I'm also going to use it to thin the paint. I noticed in the first coat, which is fine, it went on thick and dried pretty quick. Even though I'm at 65 in my shop, it dried probably quicker than I would like. So I'm going to thin it out a little bit to give me some open time, but also to, I think, make my wet edge where the previous coat and the new coat are going on, meaning the first brush and then the second pass. It's just too cliffy or chunky. It's like a hard edge. So I'm going to use the thinner to give myself a lot more open time, but also to smooth out that brush from real wet to the previous wet. This paint says you could probably do 2 coats, and I'm not sure. They don't talk about a sanding in between, so I think this is a paint that goes on typically on a boat, bam, every 4 hours maybe, or once a day, and then into the water. It's an ablative anti-fouling. So it does have a little bit of ablative tendencies for meaning marine growth to repel them, but it also comes out very hard. I used it on another WageMaker hull like this with the laps on it, and I was really happy with it. It came out really smooth. And the second or third coat, I thinned it, and it really went on smooth and dried very flat. So I'm going to do that with this boat. That was during the summer. This is in the heat of the shop, so it might be a little bit different. But I'm playing with the recipe, try to get it right. And yeah, so hopefully this will be the last coat, but I have enough paint to do another one if I have to. So I'm counting on three. If two is done, great. If not, I'm going to count on three because bottoms of boats get a lot of abuse, either from the trailer or the shoreline you pulled up on a remote beach somewhere, or just running through the water. This paint is designed to shed a little bit, but it's harder than some of the more traditional sailboat paints, which sitting in the slip, they're meant to repel marine growth all the time. This one, because it's for power boats, has more of a harder tendency and it won't wear off as fast. So going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to mask up because um, this is not something the first coat I did not like not having a mask, so I quickly put my mask on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again, and we'll see what it looks like. So here is the bottom of the boat after the second coat has been completed. It looks really good compared to coat number one. Really pleased with that. It does bring out some of the warts and wrinkles on this boat bottom. You know, it's 85 years old, so, or 60, 40, yeah, 65 years old. So it's definitely got some waves in the bottom that, I mean, I'm not sure where they came from. I hand sanded this mostly, so it wasn't like it was the orbital sander. It could have just been some of the age on it that is now showing with shiny paint, but essentially it's on the bottom. You won't see it, but that doesn't make it, you know, great. But the sides will be much better without the laps and adding a different layer of wood on top of the molded hull. This is much smoother. I can just tell from looking at the primer coats. And then with the black on it, it'll become very important that this is smooth. So until we put the primer back on the top sides, call it a night. Here we have the second coat of the whole side primer. Drastic improvement after the first one where it always pulls out the flaws that you missed. But this one really has filled in some of the grain issues I was worried about, but also covered up all of the patches that I had, and you had seen that in the previous um, film or video where it was just pocked with some filler. So what I'll do is I'm going to sand this one down. I'm going to take a harsh light to it tomorrow and look for anything that I think has to be filled now, because right after this is paint. it looks this good, then I won't have to do any more. This would be coat 2. 3 is, pretty normal, but I did a lot of work on this before I even did the primer. If you remember, I had varnish that I was putting filler on, so I count that as a coat as well that was doing some filling. Part of it is you're trying to give it a nice flat surface for the finished paint, and I think that's where I'm at. So hopefully this will be the last one, and then we can go right to the black. All right, I'm ready to put black paint on this boat. I just spent 5 hours hand sanding with 180 to get the last coat of primer, which was 3 in the end, and did that to fill the grain in the wood, which I could not fill properly with the fairing compound, so I had to just use the paint, which I did get it finally in there. I believe this black paint, is going to be just like the other paint I used a couple years ago on a wage maker, some beautiful bikini blue. Really goes on well, beautiful application, but to really get a great surface, you got to sand it a few times. So I'm looking forward to probably spending another week after this video just getting the white and the black flat before I put the boot stripe on. So I won't be putting the boot stripe on in this video as much as I would like. I know I've got some work ahead of me, so I'm not going to kid myself. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the black version of the Petit EZ-Poxy. I used this in bikini blue a few years ago and loved it. This is a single part polyurethane. You don't even have to thin it. It goes on so nice. I did clean the hull with Petit's 120 brushing thinner just to get all the dust off. And I'm going to have a brush handy because, I've got some lap there I need to deal with. And then, of course, the little spray rail and such. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This also smells enough where I'm going to put a mask on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'll kind of show you a little bit in between when I'm working on it. Here we are with the first coat of black on. Of course, the first thing that you're going to notice, no, there's not a black and white bow next to it, but the roller, as it went on, took on more paint and became better. I don't know if I've ever seen it do it that dramatically. I know with brushes and foam brushes will do that, but yeah, so I should be able to save some paint on the port side. This came out. This is a very good indication of what it's going to look like. You can imagine where the blue tape is. That is where the gold boot stripe is. I'm going to go eventually. So very happy. This boat does have the telltale wooden boat waves. That's from the wood. I've noticed that even in the other wage maker I worked on. And black makes it only worse. There's the transom. This is where the paint really started to cover well, and then that port side really, I'm sorry, it would be the starboard side. And then this side really took off in the wrong direction because I hadn't got enough paint in the roller. Even though I was putting it on as much as I would like, didn't want it to run. So I'd much rather have thin than thick because you can always sand between coats, and I do. You can do a 4-hour flip on this, maybe. It does recommend a full day, and that's what I'll do. I'll sand it tomorrow afternoon and then put coat 2 on. And I'll probably start on the other side and come around and finish up with a full roller on this side, and it should even out, right? So I'll see you tomorrow. Well, it's the next day, and I'm sitting in front of the boat, very happy with the feel and look of the boat. And yes, this is coat number 1 of many. So I am not lulled into thinking this is it. In the next weeks, I will be spending time using 220 grit sandpaper to flatten this surface several times, and then a coat of paint will go on. And eventually I get to a nice, flat, shiny finished product that I'm happy with. In this paint, because it is paint, it can be polished. So, and I've had that experience with, this boat over here where I got it so smooth, it was amazing. Really changed my opinion of how you could put paint on a vintage boat and that still not be done. You could still polish it. Varnish, I probably wouldn't do that because varnish is designed that the UV protection that varnish has, which is less than pigmented paint, is that it rises to the surface when the curing process takes place. And then when you polish that off, it's probably not the best thing. Some boats, obviously, if it's a trailer queen in and out of a storage area on a way to a boat show or whatever, is fine. I see the owner of this boat using this quite a bit. And you have a black boat. This is at the end of the color spectrum when it comes to absorbing paint or energy from the sun. So that considered, the UV protection comes from the color, not a sunscreen type that was put into varnish. So the sunscreen is the paint, and you can polish it. So while I'm not looking forward to doing that on purpose, if I had to, I could use a polishing technique to give it the smooth, beautiful finish that I know the owner's going to want. So I'm going to spend my time doing that. And I hope to have that done, the gold boot stripe, the bottom, and have it flipped over. So the next video that we have concerning this boat most likely will be upright again, and the black will probably be already on the covering board and this rub rail. I do not want to finish this boat upside down thinking that this rub rail and covering board are done. If this boat has to be done in 2 stages. I'm going to come down to here, and that's where the rub rail trim goes. And then because I have hard breaks in this paint, meaning right here in the crease, I can flip this boat over and repaint it with tape, and this crease would cover the break. And if I polish it, you wouldn't see it anyway. So there's that sort of, I have that out. Transom is another piece where it's broke. It means it's its own panel of a boat, so the surface can be done all by itself and then have hard edges, which would allow me to do an extra coat of paint on the transom if I was unhappy for something. So again, thank you for subscribing. If you're finding this series helpful or entertaining, please hit the like button. It's always nice to receive that sort of encouragement. And I will see you in a few weeks. If I don't get this done, I'm going to have another video that I will put in its place while I continue to do this, so you get a nice looking job when I get to the next video on this chapter. So again, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you soon.